Vayse. Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff. I'm Peter C. Hine, and joining me as always is my old friend and co-host. He's the alpha geek of Vayse-coded strangeness, a pop culture Chad whose based ideas have weird-pilled many an Omega normie such as myself. But little does he know that he's about to be wand-mogged by a sorcery maxer when we talk to today's guest. It's Mr. Stephen James Buckley.
Relax, Unk.
How are you doing, Buckley?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, we don't normally ask each other how we are at the start.
No, I know. I thought we'd be civilized because we're in company.
Most podcasts do that. They say that the guests say like, "How are you?"
Yeah, but we don't do it in person either, do we? We just kind of get straight in.
Yeah. We go straight in. So yeah. So before we start, if you're listening to this and enjoy what you hear, then please consider subscribing to us on Ko-Fi. It's just $5 per month, and you get access to our Discord server where there's all sorts of weird and wonderful and sometimes quite mundane discussions going on. And you also get access to the PK files, which is a subscriber-exclusive podcast within a podcast where we allow random elements to determine our topic of conversation. We rely on these subscriptions to cover the cost of creating the show. So if you like what we do, then please head over to kofi.com/Vayse. That's KOFI.com/Vayse. Also, please make sure you give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform. And most importantly, tell your like-minded friends about Vayse. Human connection is what we're all about. Thank you.
Well done.
Right,
We
can
can
carry on with the show now.
Tell your unlike-minded friends as well, and even people who aren't your friends. Just tell everyone and see what sticks.
Yeah, and we're cool with connecting with non-humans as well. So, dogs, backrooms entities, flowers.
It's all good to us. So let's. I am excited to talk to our guest and to talk about the topic that we're talking about today. So, our guest tonight is someone who needs no introduction here on Vayse. I'm just going to give you the bare bones, as I could talk for a full 2 hours or more about their extensive work and experience in chaos magic, animism, and talismanic sorcery. For a full introduction, listen to episode 42 of Vayse, which I'll link to in the show notes. It's an individual who is publicly, and I assume privately, forging their own path in self-guided animist spirituality and directive contemplative practice, for want of a better description of something that I struggle to describe, but connect with profoundly on an experiential basis. They're a teacher to many, a reassuringly grounded presence in a wider community that seems to be increasingly filled with mean-spirited edgelords, stuffed shirt gurus, and reactionary posers. And, at the risk of repeating myself with monotonous regularity, they are without a doubt one of my all-time favourite writers in any genre or discipline. It's the return of Aidan Wachter. Hello, Aidan.
Howdy, how are you? That was way too kind. But I'm not sure what I can do in private can qualify as being related to any of that stuff. But
that's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast.
And speaking of podcasting, you've started this week, the week that we're recording this, releasing your own podcast again. So that's been a couple of years since the last one that you did.
Yeah, it has been. It's funny. I know that Peter's in my Discord, but people have been asking forever, like, why is Discord called Glimmering? Because it was really intended to be the Discord for the podcast, but the podcast never happened until last week. So
no, it was really good. I really enjoyed that first episode. It was it really brought some context to what I wanted to talk to you about tonight as well, which was fantastic timing. Everything just fell into place when I listened to that. But I'd recommend everyone listen to that. And that gives a pretty good introduction to your practice and what you do as well. So if people here aren't familiar with Aidan's work, look at The Glimmering, which is is it on all podcasting platforms now, or is it?
It should be on all podcasting platforms, and it's Glimmering, GLY.
Yeah.
Because there was another podcast that was using the I. And anyway, it looks cooler with the Y. So
Yeah, no,
it looks all
does.
oldie.
Yeah, it's got that.
Yeah, I assumed it was intentional because it looked cooler.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could have got away with that.
It's like the way that bands do it, isn't it? Like
Exactly.
Well, it was wrong.
It's also, it's really an homage to someone I know a bit, and Elizabeth Hand, who's mostly known as a science fiction writer, but for the last, I want to say close to 20 years maybe, has been writing more crime novels. But and Liz wrote a book a million years ago called Glimmering, which is about kind of a number of people's experiences after basically like mining for precious gases and collapses the Ross ice shelf and releases so much methane that it basically produces like this massive amount of atmospheric static and takes out all of our comms and kind of moves things towards a nuclear winter. It's quite a grim tale, but
that sounds right up my street. I've got a few of her books, so I'll hunt that one down.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah. But so it was part of that. And then when I was like, what the fuck does that mean anyway? I know what I think it means, which was the idea of like these vague lights or vague ideas or whatever. But going into the old English slang dictionaries, it's also like fire and eyes. So it's like sight as well.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that was really interesting. Specifically like glimmers or eyes.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, the layers of meaning, that's excellent. It does just look and sound cool, though. I think that was the first thing that Buckley said to me when I texted him. I said, "Oh, Aidan's got a new podcast." And Buckley texted back, "Cool name."
You got to name everything right.
Yeah.
You guys did good. A lot of podcasts, I'm like, what? You guys nailed it.
Yeah. Well, this came from a dream. Vayse came from a dream, so you can always count your dreams. Like, if I just thought of the name, I would have thought, that's a bit shit.
But, if I'm starting an OnlyFans.
Man's got to make a living, right?
Yeah. The Y reminded me of it was the Terry Pratchett book, Weird Sisters, where weird is with a Y as well, and I think that's kind of, I think it's possibly like an old English spelling of weird.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that was, and I think that was the origin, because you find that a lot in the kind of Nordic old Germanic stuff is closer to that too.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That the EI thing hadn't really been figured out yet. And I also liked it because it was like, because I don't have a lot of answers. And so it's like, not I know the way, but like I'm seeing signs, that are often pretty vague, but I think you can follow them to places, or at least I've been able to follow them to places. So
yeah, I mean, I really like that idea, because it's something that we talk about, well, me and Buckley privately, but probably on the podcast as well, is that the more people we talk to and the more we learn about this, is just the less we actually know about it. So we never really get answers to the questions. We just learn better questions. And, it does kind of keep you humble, that, because you kind of realize that you're almost like in a big room with just a torch, just a flashlight, and you're sort of waving it around, and you think you've got the measure of it, and then you hit something over in the corner, and what the hell's that? And it's something completely different, and it's just a weird feeling. But once you get used to it, I like that kind of uncertainty. I like the not knowing now, which is great.
Yeah, I totally get that. In the book that I'm working on now, there's a section where I talk about kind of like spirit communication and the way that it works for me, and it's difficult. We're having kind of conversations in the Glimmering Discord this week about that, but last couple of days. But in the book, what I said is, it's like, for me at least, it's like I'll do some piece of work, or I'll ask a question of the allies, or I'll have the weird dream or whatever, and it's usually not full blown at all. It's like I just like there's like a new seed of an idea, and like I'll kind of let that churn, and then one day I go back to it, and it's a little bit like now that little arrow that's pointing to the side that tells you that there's a drop down menu has appeared, like
Yeah.
in your fucking knowledge. And you go, oh, wait a second. And you can kind of like dive in a little bit deeper. And once you get in there, kind of like sub menus open up. And this is very metaphorical, of course, but it's kind of like it just keeps getting to be more and more
Yeah.
things.
So it kind of
It's not like
organically
anything.
grows rather than you just getting a flash of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah. And the reason that we've got Aidan here today, and the thing that sparked me asking Aidan to join us again on the podcast, which we're really, really glad to have you again, Aidan. It's been 21 episodes, I think, since the last one you were on. So it seems like a good time to have you back. But so a lot of the episodes that we've been doing recently, and well, probably always, but particularly recently, have been probably reflecting a little bit more on the terrible state of everything at the moment in terms of, I mean, I don't know where to start because I don't want to sound like, we can still be happy, we can still have good times, but the politics is horrible, the economy is horrible, the pending ecological disaster is horrible, the way that people are treating each other is horrible, and it becomes more and more apparent, I think, nearly every day. And I really wanted to talk more about this. And we got stuck into it a little bit in our UFO episode, which is the truth, really, is that the whole of the UFO movement at the moment is just based around making money for people who already have a lot of money. But you can say that about almost anything. And that's what upsets me at the moment. You can say that about almost everything that people are doing at the moment. And I really wanted to find someone to talk to come on to the podcast to talk about this. And you were just the person I kept coming back to when I was trying to plan it all out, because it's something that you talk about on your Discord, on your Patreon, and something that you've hinted at will be covered a lot in your new book when that's released. So I suppose, I think the first thing that I wanted to ask you, and again, we're not about getting answers, but maybe your opinion is, how have we got to this point now? Broadly speaking, how has it come? Because obviously humans have always had wars, and there's always been disagreements, and there's always been prejudice, I suppose. But it just seems to be coming to such a boiling point at the moment, particularly in the last 10 or 15 years, certainly. What do you think has instigated that sudden acceleration in this sort of spread of hatred and inequality?
Yeah, so to touch on the second part of what you said first, this is a really long thing coming. This is the thing that I think a lot of folks that aren't kind of looking at it in a really long historical view can get really fucked up by, because they think it's sudden. And then you have folks like, just in the United States, like Black folks and indigenous Native American folks, who are like, no, this has been bad for a long time, right? It's just you white folks are starting to notice that it's actually affecting you in ways that you can't really ignore, right? And that's correct, right? Because privilege is like an insulator, and it's also one of the tools. This is one of the things that I talk about in the book, is for this to happen, it's not just that you have to have people on top and their enforcement kind of arms. You also have to make people feel complicit. And so I think that that's kind of what politically was figured out, probably in kind of what led into Reagan Thatcher years, right? Just talking about the two countries I know the most about. Yeah. And my knowledge is way heavier on the US side, of course. But and so what I actually think is why it's accelerated is because of climate change and climate migration. That I think things really kind of heated up when those studies came out saying how much of currently populated kind of equatorial zones were going to become unlivable unless radical change happened. And they began actually studying how many people would have to move out of those zones to survive as they became unlivable. And I think that's the shift, is all these forces who are continuously saying, yeah, that's bullshit. What they're doing, to me, puts the lie to that. They absolutely know and they realize like, oh fuck, we could get swamped here by people who are not down with our program. And so I think this is kind of what's going on, even why so many Western countries are kind of ignoring what's going on with Israel and Gaza, and now what's going on with the US and Iran. They're talking a little bit about it, but they're not getting involved because they see those as producing a buffer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in the US, the GOP and the conservative movement has been pushing this, we must build the wall. And I think that that's literally what it's for. They talk about the migration now because a bunch of them would love to have this white Christian ethno-state here.
Yeah.
But the actual fear, I think, is unless they get that completely locked down, that everybody that doesn't run towards kind of Uruguay, Argentina part of South America, and vacating Central America south will be coming up here. And they can't fucking contemplate that. They don't have the brain power to go, okay, well, this is just what's going to happen because of what we've done, and how do we make it work?
Yeah.
Which anybody sane would be doing that, right? If you go, okay, if the issue is that fucking a gazillion people are going to fucking end up starving, you figure out how do we readjust to make this work for everybody.
Yeah.
And the other piece to that ties into kind of a lot of the stuff in the book, which is, it's about animism and magic, and then what I call empire, which is my umbrella term for all this stuff, from racism, misogyny, transphobia, kind of ecophobia, kind of what I've seen for a long time in the U.S. As kind of like fear of the natural world. Like we need to exploit it in part because it's not controllable, and anything we can't control, we're afraid of, for those people. Essentially, this becomes the issue of like, are we actually doing this to survive as a species, or are we thinking that maybe that's just not going to happen because we can't figure out a way where we get to keep all our toys, which is what all these rich motherfuckers are doing. And so let's see if we can survive.
And you get the feeling that some of that is almost a tactic, or almost certainly is a tactic by the people who have the power and the money, the billionaires, to basically create other complications and things that keep people distracted so that they can make sure that when the shit hits the fan and all this stuff starts to actually, I mean, it's already starting to affect people's lives, but when it really starts to affect the lives of the people in the Western world, that they will basically stockpiled enough wealth, power, land, resources to be able to survive for longer than all the people who have been kind of kept down by the things that they're selling them, effectively, the stories that they're telling them, the products that they're selling them, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting because it's like, I can't remember who it is, and I can dig it up for you, but there's are you familiar with Rachel Donald's podcast, Planet Critical?
No, I'm not.
Really good podcast that is touching on a lot of this stuff on the political side, not on the metaphysical side. But one of the best that I found, and one of the, I think it was her that had on this woman that ran a project out of Switzerland called the Lily Project. And that project is really looking at, could we actually, with the knowledge they already had, like this is like kind of meta studying different things and some other stuff that they kind of created in there, like what is actually required from an economic, technological, industrial, whatever aspect for most folks on the planet to have well-being. And they basically went like, no, we could like half all of the energy expenditures and generally do half of the damage. And this is pre-monster data center kind of thing that we're in right now, and get there. But the problem is you can't have billionaires. You can't have these people who are operating at this massive level, because some of the shit's crazy when you look at the numbers. And I'm not the guy that's got the head for the infinite links and names on all this stuff, but like what kind of the annual maintenance is as part of GDP for some small island countries for like a super yacht, and it's more.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, so that's a thing that shouldn't exist, right? This is a very
Yeah.
straightforward thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even benefit anyone.
No.
Like, there are people that are well off, that are rich, that do benefit people,
Yes.
that give something back to,
Yes.
whether it be, even if it's just a case of, they make beautiful music, or they write fantastic books or make films or whatever, but they're giving something back. There's some kind of input that they've got into making the world a better or more interesting, or even if it's just escapism. But like the billionaires that you're talking about, there's just like nothing. It's like it becomes like a pathology. I think it becomes like almost like a mindset where they're kind of almost mentally quite different from everyone else because they've just got such a different experience.
And that's really what the book is looking at. Is it's really looking at it's basically got two chunks, and the front half of it, or at this point 2/3 of it, is kind of looking at kind of not like an ethnological study of animism, but just kind of looking at, from my position as a magician who has looked at a bunch of that stuff, but not as an academic at all, and not in that way, but just like, this is interesting. These people know some things we don't know. What is that? And it's kind of looking at the idea that all of this stuff, from spousal abuse and rape and uh, slavery and mass warfare and all this shit, is essentially, I view it as a spirit sickness. It's some kind of a pathology, and it predominantly operates. And this is where it gets tricky, because we end up almost in that zone of all the bullshit kind of distraction of kind of the all men argument that came out during the Me Too movement, which is bullshit. You go, yeah, no, we're all aware. Not every guy does this. It's not the fact that you have a cock and a balls and identify as male that makes you a rapist. We get that, right? Everybody gets that. But this thing seems to mostly infect guys, and it seems to mostly propagate in there. It absolutely, there's women who do the same thing, right? But it's at a much lower level. It's you can't consider those as being even relevant. Those are super outliers historically too, And I totally, that's my take, and that's the take of my allies. Is they're like, no, this is a kind of a sickness that used to be mitigated by kind of what we would think of, misusing the language here, but of kind of the elders and the shamanic kind of folks within tribal units. They would go, this guy's losing his shit and is abusing the women or the kids, or is hoarding meat that he's finding, or is hoarding tools that he's finding. We got to get that fixed, because there's no reason for it, right? We don't need it. They understood that survival was a group project, right? It's not about the individual. And so that's what my allies and some of the ancestral spirits that I talk to have said, and that's why I've been talking about this stuff. They're like, this is an optional thing. All of this stuff is optional. That's the thing that they also don't want to talk about. Like, if you get into these discussions about downshifting and everything, everybody comes out, and some of it is like, people have been trained to defend this stuff, not realizing that they've been trained to. Because they'll go, but if we downshift, what about everybody that's on life support? What about everybody that needs all this stuff? And you go, look, this is not a straightforward thing. Obviously, you're going to have to pour more resources into some people because they've got difficulties, and we could do that. It's not about that. It's about, do we egregiously just hoard and take and fuck shit up?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to go around, and even the very pessimistic scientists and economists know that at the moment there is enough for everyone. Even if there's 8 billion people on the planet, there's enough for them all, but it's just being held in the wrong places. I read something, and I just quickly checked then that I'd heard it right, because I couldn't, the numbers didn't seem right. But if you were in a room with infinite money, and you could keep $1 every time you signed it, and you could sign $1 a second, and you didn't have to sleep, it would take you 11 and a half days to make $1 million, right? But it would take you, I think it's like 37 years to make $1 billion. And so if you extrapolate that to you times it by however many times, however rich Elon Musk is
hundreds
now,
of billions.
you couldn't do it in a lifetime. You couldn't do that. And when you think about money in that sort of way, nobody needs that. You can't spend it. You can't. It
stops being money at that point. Almost, it starts being something else.
Yeah,
I feel like when you think about what money is, it's like and what it's for. It's almost like that kind of money has a completely different use and kind of meaning to it than what regular people like us would think of as money.
It's a pathology, isn't it? It's a sickness.
It reminds me of that idea of is it wet eco or the wet eco, the mind sickness.
It is. And I haven't read a lot on that. A few people have suggested that I should look at that. And just kind of throw my thing out there is I really try to avoid using any specific indigenous language because I'm not within the cultures to really get it. From what I've seen, that's a convenient concept, but I don't think it's really talking about the same thing. Like that seems like maybe it's a form of this, but that's really like where I've seen where I have looked into that. It seems like it's kind of like almost specifically pushed into like cannibalist drives. So not really about acquisition of power. It's like Watiko is, from what I have seen, and this is very shallow for me because it's like kind of like went in and go, no, that's not language that I should be using here, but let's go check it out. It seems to be a different thing, and so I would defer to somebody who is within one of those cultures that uses that for that idea. But I think there's a lot of different places that look at these kinds of things and recognize them as a spiritual sickness.
Yeah, because that sort of spiritual sickness seems to be just extremely prevalent at the moment, and it's demonstrated by the people either in power or the people who want to be in power. And obviously, I mean, Donald Trump is the perfect example, unfortunately, of the sort of sickness that Buckley's talking about. This like, you can see he looks like what he is, if you see what I mean.
I was going to say, yeah.
You can see it in him, but I mean,
manifested.
Yeah, that's it. But I think that he is an extremely extreme example, and I think also that there are other people who act in perhaps a similar way, but without the malignant narcissism, because so he is the icon, the absolute poster boy of this horrible sickness of our time. But there's some people who are probably less evil, but they're so enamored by or ignorant about or unaware of the system that they are part of and serving that they can't really they don't even see that it's wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's like kind of like that idea of which often comes around in really unrelated places, like entrepreneurial classes. It's like for most people, I think what it is that there's been kind of a weaponization of scarcity mindset. Like if you can convince people that that there's not enough to go around, and therefore it becomes a right for you to hoard, for you to control, and to defend your TV with a shotgun. You kind of got, this is where I kind of was talking about the complicity aspect, is it's like you've got somebody who's now going to look at really egregious shit done further up the chain, and they can see the reflection in what they do, even if it's on an unconscious level. And to call that out up there, they would feel complicit. Like, I do that too, right? Instead of, I think, kind of the healthy way to kind of approach that is to go like, yeah, when things are tough and I have very little, I get really scared, right? And what's the correction there? Is there a correction there? And I think that the correction is what I've been calling kind of in my own head is kind of like functional society. Like a functional society is one where you can kind of go, hey, I'm falling through the cracks. Can I get a hand? And there's versions of that that we're seeing now as kind of all of the systems become more and more fucked up and more predatory. Where somebody, dies young without much money and everybody kind of coughs in and makes sure that the family's got enough money to make it through the next 6 months or a year to kind of get their shit together. But that would have been happening within the actual immediate kind of zone of the people Now we're doing it kind of through GoFundMe's and things like that all over the world. But when I look at that stuff, I do see that this is people trying to, even if they aren't thinking of it that way, they're showing that counter impulse to all of this. It's like, yeah, I don't know that person, but that sucks. And I have $10 I could toss in to help. And I think that that's a really important thing to see, is because the really egregious fucked up forms of all this stuff are so massive. I don't think we see the little stuff that we can do all the time that is the real counter to that.
I think that the complicity thing is a particularly difficult point and a bit of a scary one to talk about in some ways, because there's the more overt kind of complicity that you were talking about, the scarcity mindset, in that they think, they honestly think, and without necessarily any malice, that they are defending their own survival. Because that's the way that society has made them have to feel, and again, that's just caused by equality, because someone's taken all the stuff, there isn't enough to go around, or they feel there isn't enough to go around. But there's also what I feel, which is kind of almost hypocrisy, when I'm thinking of things like, I use Amazon sometimes, to get a delivery, or I mean, even now when we're talking on across the world by video, we're probably using Amazon web hosting somewhere along the chain. We're probably using some data center that's gobbling up water and so on. And you feel like you're caught in a web, and that can be enough. And I feel it myself sometimes. That can be enough to make you think like, oh, what's the point? What can I do? I've already lost. And it's difficult to climb out of that hole.
And so the thing and I think it's really interesting, because the thing that, and again, a lot of this stuff came through with me talking with some different spirits, and mostly they're all ancestral spirits. These are not the fully disincarnate ones, because they don't really tend to give a fuck about this kind of stuff in my experience. But the ex-humans are all on board, or a bunch of them. The thing that I would say that helped me was realizing all of these like interlaced systems and all of that kind of, how do we make everybody feel complicit? All that's intentional. And so it's supposed to make you do that. It's supposed to make you end up with, well, what's the point? Let's just see how much I can get, right? And they count on that. And I do think that this shift that we're seeing right now, I see a lot of good in all of the horrible shit that's happening, not for the people that it's happening to. That's just fucked up. But it does seem like there's a potential present right now for more people to go, I don't want this to be this way than I've ever seen. And so that is good. It's bad the way that we had to get there. You would like people to kind of wake up earlier. But one of the things that I think all this stuff relies on is that if you're a totally fucked up person who is kind of possessed by this rampaging need for power and wealth and kind of insulation from repercussions from your fucked up actions, that's like a really narrow focus. Like you can build a whole life around just doing that. And so you can kind of sit in that room signing dollar bills, right? Whereas everybody else has got medical shit, they've got jobs, they've got kids, they've got social responsibilities that they're actually tending to. And I think that the folks on top know this, and they know like y'all won't get it together for long enough to unseat most of us, you know. And so it's a weird one because it's not like everybody needs to instantly become an activist, because what I've got from the folks that I talk to and the people that I talk to that are, what most people mean when they're talking about people, um, the living human people I talk to, um,
Yeah.
uh, think is like, you go, okay, so just in the US, that shift from where things were kind of moving a little bit better has been like 40 plus years. And so you got to assume it's going to take at least that much time to get out of it, right? And if you look at the whole system, well, you go, depending on how far you want to go, and I would say kind of probably the beginning of kind of grain storage agriculture and the very earliest rise of kind of fortified towns and shit like that. We're playing this incredibly long game, and I think we have to pick that up. I mean, that's kind of what happened in the conservative movements that have been successful, is that they went, okay, we're going to take every fucking inch of ground we can, always, right? And that's played out very well. And luckily, I think in the US, we got incredibly lucky because we got the most of just egregiously unintelligent people doing this. And it could have been way worse. There's a bunch of people you would not want to be in charge because it would all be over in a very different way than it is. Um, but I do think we can climb out of it. But I think it's almost like I think it's a multi-generational project of kind of doing the reverse of that thing of like incrementally you go, what can we get rid of? What can we make unacceptable? You go, okay, as you know, at least how people perceive us from the outside, however we might perceive ourselves as dudes, you can go, okay, I'm going to not truck with anybody who is abusive to their kids or family. And I'm going to be vocal about that. And I'm not going to let the other things I might like about them derail that, right? Because this is kind of the biggest piece of complicity in all of this stuff, is that I don't personally believe that we would be here as a species and have had functional societies, because there have been a lot of them, at least way more functional than what we're in right now. They've just been much smaller if kind of the levels of rampant, inside the family sexual abuse had been going on. And I say that as somebody that this went on in my family, and it left a lot of damage there, though I wasn't directly victim of that. But previous generations were. And so I kind of have lived with the scarring of that. And every step that we can make going the other way and then never let go of that ground is, I think, the answer, which nobody wants to hear because that's a fucking epic project, So, I live somewhere that currently is fairly what we would call progressive, though I don't love that word because I think progress is a total myth. And kind of supporting everybody that is maintaining that and everybody that is trying to expand that a little bit is hugely valuable, because you got to have some places where people are just like, no, this is not how we do things. And that can be on a neighborhood level. It's what we saw here, most notably and best known kind of internationally in Minnesota with the ICE raids there. It's like, that is what has to happen. Because these guys are digging their own graves. And we kind of have to let them, and they're starting to eat each other, which is the goal. And so we have to not do that amongst ourselves, which is very common on the kind of left in particular, of like, let's police everything down to like, there's perfect language. And if you don't know it, I'm going to ream you. Not I'm going to educate you, but that's the argument. That's what is claimed. Like, no, I'm going to make you feel bad. I'm going to make you feel more complicit, which drives you right back to the place that we don't want you to go.
I've heard it said that one of the advantages that the right has is the factions within the right work together better than the factions within the left, who tend to just bicker, whereas the sort of far right can get on with the alt right, who can get on with a lot of folk who are even just center of right, to work together to do something. And I do agree that there's this tendency for people on the left to get just too caught up in their heads and arguing on fine details that don't really matter when you're in the situation that we're in now.
If you're trying to solve like a bigger problem,
exactly, yeah,
then you save them for later,
or for
whatever,
academics
like,
to work out.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of like I said before in our one of our kind of private podcasts on the PK files, like I think that social media plays into that because it encourages extreme views. It encourages like people to say things that either really, really upset people or that everyone agrees with because it's kind of low-hanging fruit. So it encourages you to say things that get likes. So it encourages you to, if somebody, say on social media, says something that if they, like you say, use the wrong word or something, but they're otherwise quite well-meaning, then jump on that person and make sure everyone knows that you have told everyone that this person is wrong, because that'll get you the likes from the people who think exactly the same as you anyway. So you've solved nothing. All you've done is humiliate this person who's probably actually quite a well-meaning person. They've just used the wrong word.
Yeah.
And it's like you could have sent them a private message.
Yeah.
But it's like social media encourages everyone to be performative with stuff like that. And I think like it's interesting because I've always, well, not always, but I've recently thought that a lot of the problems we have all just basically boiled down to social media. But obviously what you're saying, Aidan, is that it goes back way further than that. And social media is more of a symptom, I guess.
It's basically, I think, the folks that want it again, it goes to that time-based thing of like, how much time do you have to try and generate what you want, right? So if you are, and we just go to the classic example here, you look at how much the internet got damaged basically by people who were literally like living in their parents' basements rent free, figuring out how to fuck with people, right? And now we have kind of moved a bunch of these people into positions of power or as adjuncts to people in power. And all of that had to do with that lack of responsibility for outcome, which is kind of where it's a thing that I mentioned in the book that like there's this fantasy that if I'm talking about billionaires, well, then I'm down on Beyonce or something. You go like, no, that's a legit way to make $1 billion as far as I'm concerned. You used the tools there, but you had a fucking thing that you figured out that people fucking loved. Good on you, you know.
I kind of worry as a parent as well, because obviously kids are exposed to a lot of this and they're exposed to it very young. And we all know that social media is largely unregulated. I mean, they kid themselves that it is, but it isn't. And so these extreme polarizing views that Buckley was talking about and the almost distilled and compressed misogyny that you were talking about earlier, Aidan, becomes, I mean, it's difficult to get away from the word pathology, but it becomes infectious and it becomes something that will get into people's heads. And what's particularly nefarious about it, I think, is that as well as being extremely damaging to the person who is internalizing those views and the people around them and the people that they'll meet in the future, it also perpetuates itself and destroys in the mind of those people often the ability to think critically, because they just get used to internalizing those things that they are told. And I think that's where social media becomes particularly dangerous, is that it's not just the fact that it polarizes people, but it instigates ways of thinking in people.
Yeah, I think it's like saying that. I think it actually, when people talk about like AI psychosis, that's like something which almost with social media it's more insidious, and we kind of didn't notice it happening for a long time until social media had been around for a while. But like with AI psychosis, it's like the same thing. I think what you're saying is like the same thing as when people experience AI psychosis,
because it's coming from somewhere else, I suppose, or something.
It's more extreme with AI psychosis, so it moves quicker, so we notice it more. But I think there's a social media psychosis sort of happening in a similar way. Maybe psychosis is the wrong word, but certainly a there's something fucking with people there and changing people.
Yeah, what I talk about in the book a little bit is this idea that people have that when we're talking about let's like strip the ultra wealthy of the majority of their wealth, which is what I'm saying. Would I like to see some of them penniless? Yes, but they've done enough harm. I think it's legit. But we're not saying then that no one can be wealthy. We're saying that there is a degree that I think it's reasonable to cap it at.
Yeah.
Would be if I was the master of the social world, I would just be like, great, you can have this much money in all forms. That's how it controls how many houses you can have. It controls how many cars you can have. All that shit, just because it's reasonable and nobody needs it. And if there's no drive for that, you might get people that's all they can fucking focus on because they're so flipped out that they would then turn some of that brain power to something that's actually socially useful, right? Which is first helpful. And what I write in the book is that it's not specifically about wealth, though that's the way it manifests right now, that makes these kind of really fucked up elites and it makes people go so crazy. It's when you get to the point that you're totally insulated from the consequences of your actions. And that's what social media and the internet has always also done, right? We have these kind of essentially internet black sites where people are doing, I drug my partner and rape them for video likes, right? This shit is real. If you want to be if you want to get really fucked up, go and dig up the articles talking about all the folks that do the video. Basically the hard video censoring of all of the snuff and stuff that gets uploaded onto Facebook and things like that, and it completely fucks with their minds because these are usually people in less developed countries. It's like, oh, I've got this great job, I can actually feed my family now, I just have to watch people do fucking horrible shit to each other all day long until I lose my own mind. And it's that insulation from consequence that is the defining kind of goal of this stuff, but it also spreads that contagion. Like if I can do one horrible thing and get away with it and maybe get praised for it, then I'm going to keep going instead of I do one horrible thing, somebody finds out about it and nobody will fucking talk to me or help me when my fucking roof caves in. It begins to become self-correcting. It doesn't mean the impulses aren't there. I think that they are. And so kind of the gift of the big brain to me isn't that it makes us the crown of creation. It means that it forces us, it like literally requires us to develop ethics that we live by. And this is all, how do we get away from all of that? We don't believe in that. That's not real. It's not measurable. There's no income gained from me being ethical and doing the right thing.
Yeah, because with the internet and social media, and particularly the 24-hour connectivity and apps and that kind of thing, it's almost as if both the people viewing the content and the people making the content have had split inside themselves, impulse from instinct. So you get this. I know I joked about it when I was introducing Buckley before, but you get a prime example is Luxmaxing, for example. Now they've taken something which is, the idea that perhaps there's a mild instinctive tendency for people who like men to admire something, be it a square jaw or the way that their eye tilts or something. But then they've magnified it and magnified it and magnified it until it becomes grotesque and like quite horrible to see. And that is, why are they doing that? They couldn't explain, I don't think. If you ask them, why are you doing this to people like that? I only know one of them. Is it clavicular or someone? Yeah.
I don't know much about it. Like someone told me about it, and I assumed it was a joke. I didn't think it was real, and then I realized, oh no, hang on, it's 2026. This is absolutely real.
But basically, he hit himself in the face with a hammer because he thought that minor abrasions would. But all this kind of thing. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, it's horror movie stuff that we're seeing. But
it is horror movie stuff.
Yeah,
and it's essentially, this is kind of what's wild. If you think about it, you go like. Yeah, you look at like the rampant plastic surgery among young women that we know is linked to social media, right?
Yeah.
And so you go, there's all of this stuff there. The social media platforms knew this was happening, but it continued to drive business. The people that were providing these services are like, wow, okay, now we have this infinite population that if they're starting when they're 18 or 20, I'll be seeing this person for the next 60 years, right? So we've generated I imagine there's been a massive increase in the last 5 years of people going like, oh yeah, I want to go into that rather than straight up medicine, right? Straight up medicine is fucking massive pain in the ass. All of this stuff that is not covered by insurance, so you're out of that whole rigmarole. Cool, dump me in a bunch of people with money and I will essentially look smack them. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
These boys are just doing it with mallets and shit.
They're doing it in a more masculine way. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to prove that you're a dumbass when you do it, right?
Yeah,
that's the masculine way.
No, it's totally crazy because that's on the side of the people who are making the content, but then the people who are watching the content, and I'm as guilty guilty of this as anyone. You're having your brain hijacked, and your sort of dopamine system hijacked, your desire for novelty hijacked. It's splitting it down into the perfect delivery system, which bypasses your critical faculties and pours the nonsense directly into your brain, and it gets into your dreams and all that.
And this is the thing that's really interesting is it's like we know and have always known, at least I have always known because I fell in with the Andrew and Alice Vax world as a young person, which he is a fiction writer and as a lawyer and she as a prosecutor were heavily involved in kind of raising awareness around sex crimes and primarily child sex crimes in the U.S. So I kind of came up with way more knowledge of that stuff than most people I knew because of following their work. I simply don't believe that this has always been as rampant as it is. And I think it's completely disingenuous to say, like, okay, how many people are now hitting themselves in the face with fucking mallets because clavicular is out there, right? Is this clavicular's fault? Not really. He's a symptom who's generating more symptom. And it ties back into the magical idea then of contagion, right? Like, you come in contact with this shit, it does something to you. Now, maybe what you have is like a really robust immune system response that says, fuck that, nothing to do with that. But because the delivery system has kind of trained us to just like the delivery system, it's like the junkies who, and I don't know how many junkies you have all known, a lot of them that I've known, like specifically love the whole needle process. They love cooking it down. They love that whole thing.
It's the ritual, isn't it?
It's the ritual of it. So they become super hooked on the delivery system as well as the drug. And I know somebody who, like, the way that they kicked was they shot sailing for years. They were like, if I get up in the morning and do this, I can go to work. And when I get home, if I do it again, I can do the shit I need to do at home and then I sleep. Which on the surface is crazy, right? But there's sense to it.
It's like cigarettes, isn't it? It's like the process of I've not smoked for a long time, but the process of lighting up a cigarette, taking it out of the packet, lighting it up, that's a ritual, and that's like that becomes part of what you enjoy about it,
Yeah.
It's fucked.
think that our listeners would never forgive us if we didn't sort of flip this around and talk a bit about magic. We've got Aidan Wachter sitting here, and we've sat here bitching for an hour now. So let's like stop and reset, because so that's the situation. It's all horrible. So just to sort of give us a palate cleanser. I was hoping that we could talk about animism for a little bit, because we didn't take it, we didn't grab the bull by the horns with this so much when we had you on last time to talk about how your understanding of animism works, where it differs from what is the received wisdom that shamanic people, which is really sort of invented in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and that kind of thing, but there is in people's minds, I think, this idea of animism that's just this sort of almost you divorced from reality. So everything's alive, that's just it, that's how it works. And it's animism's a lot more complicated than that. But what's your understanding of animism?
So the book that I'm working on is kind of is using that as the balance to this kind of issue of empire, which is all the stuff we've talked about. I qualify as the effects of empire. And so we just kind of we've looked at the sickness side, and animism to me is one of the correctives to that. So, and again, just to throw it out there, I am not a student of anything academically. I don't go in and go, okay, let's go study historical animisms and all that. I have some books on it. I've not read them for the most part. And so to me, animism is the lived experience that the world itself, and by that I mean both the material world and the world that are, or planes, or however you want to view it, that are beyond that, is essentially alive in some fashion, and in some ways conscious, and that as well, almost everything and at least everything that arises naturally shares that consciousness in ways, or shares a kind of consciousness. And so in this view, like, I question the take that a lot of people have that says, like, my computer is got a spirit. And I don't actually think that. I think you can break things down enough, and manufactured goods are difficult for me to at least perceive that way. The more naturally they are, I can see that. You give me an acoustic guitar for 10 years, and I feel like it kind of develops something like a spirit. But when it comes out of the box, it doesn't have that to me. So that's more like something has come through the years of hanging out with it and playing it. But so you're talking like this idea then of the spiritual aspect of reality is all the stuff you can't really measure with the tools that we have. So it's the stuff that is, you can't map it according to our five senses, or the tools that we use to kind of extend those. So from an animist perspective, my city that I'm in now has some kind of a spirit. This is very different to me than the spirit of the rivers that run through it, and those are very distinct. And you could just think of this as like just the vibes you get off things. It doesn't have to be like in-depth conversation or something. And the different chunks of kind of surviving forest, or then you go out of town and get out to the mountains, and the less fucked with forest. These things all are spiritually active things. And then it gets kind of tricky, because it becomes more about what are you aware of versus maybe what is. So I'm kind of psychic as a brick. I've like learned how to get by without having a lot of that. So my experience is way different than the folks that I know that can actually see all these things. I can't see them. I can feel them. And sometimes I can talk to some of them. And that's kind of a misnomer itself. I can communicate with them. It's usually a very long process. So animism puts forward that. So first there's the whole world is kind of imbued or infused with spirit. And then because of that, we're like continuously surrounded by spirit, right? Because even if I'm just looking at it that way, you go, okay, so there's a chunk of woods a quarter mile from me, and that's got a spiritual energy. All my neighbors have spirits. Their dogs and cats have spirits. The squirrels have spirits. The birds have spirits, right? Very few of these want anything to do with me. Like my neighbors are like, who is that freaky guy? Don't want to know him. The ones that I let use my parking space when I'm out of town, they like me. They're like, okay, freaky, but good. And so within this, what changes, and this is kind of what I discussed in that first episode of the Glimmering podcast, people want to go super reductionist sometimes. So they're like, well, how do you eat? And it's like, everything fucking here eats somebody else. It just determines how far, from an animist perspective, do you think that runs? Like, I don't think that it's really different if I'm eating vegetation or if I'm eating animals. Because both of those things have spirits. Both of those things are alive, right? One of them is they have different levels of kind of damage associated to how you do it. Do I think there's like way fucked up shit wrong with modern agriculture on all sides? Absolutely, And so from that animist perspective, what it's doing is, instead of saying, I am better than that and therefore I can exploit that, which is kind of what we've been talking about, and that whole kind of Christian view or biblical view of, go forward and subjugate everything because you're the shit and I made you in my image. The animist is saying, like, no, this is all relational. And so I'm going to make distinctions between what I should deal with, because some of it's not interested in me. Some of it maybe is malevolent to me. Some shit I should just not go near because it's like way beyond my abilities to deal with. But all of this is relationship based.
Yeah.
And in my view, the easiest way is to say, like, hey, everything that's alive is your kin, whether you want that to be true or not. So another way you could view this is you go like, okay, I've never eaten a squirrel, but undoubtedly my ancestors have eaten a fucking gazillion squirrels, right? So squirrels are in me as like structural components, as are all the cows and all of the fish and all of the chickens that I have eaten and all of the things my ancestors have eaten. And all of my ancestors are in me, even the really evil fucking creepy dude that was raping all his kids in the woods. Whether I want that to be true or not, as an animist, I say, yeah, that guy, some aspect of that guy is in me. All of my ancestors are in me. And this is kind of that shift from, we probably were talking more kind of practical magical stuff last time, is a lot of the stuff that I'm working on now is like, how do we come into right relationship with all these things? It's not how do I get what I need, period. It's like, how do I kind of help to generate a world where everybody is getting what they need? And the damages that have to be done are done respectfully and with kind of that long view of like, okay, again, like if I'm like king of the world, I'm like going to be like, cool, everybody out of the fucking oceans for 20 years and let's see what happens. Like we don't have to be eating ocean fish or doing all that shit. Like let's get the fuck out of there and see if that helps, To me, that's an animist perspective. And kind of that same thing that we talked about before. From an animist perspective, you would go like, why the fuck do we need any of these guys to have all this stuff? Because they're doing most of the damage. And this is that complicity piece, right? That complicity piece is they want you to think you're doing it because you ordered something from Amazon. That's not the same thing.
I heard someone say, and I can't remember whether it was, I don't even think it was a podcast about magic or anything, but they were saying if you have an animist worldview, I challenge anyone with that animist worldview to go fully behind capitalism, to ignore the ecological destruction that's being done. to the world at the moment, because you just can't hold the two things in your head at the same time. You see it, you see the damage that you're doing so much more clearly, and it gives you that kind of empathy, but it goes beyond empathy for humans. It goes more towards empathy for everything. And then you hear people like Donald Hoffman and those scientists who are really digging into what consciousness is. And it's funny because what they come out with is this idea that, well, there's probably intelligences all around us all the time, and evolution has driven us to develop in a way that minimizes those because they weren't fully essential to our immediate everyday needs and that kind of thing. And then he works out mathematics to kind of prove that. And that's not really my approach to belief or anything like that anyway, but it's just interesting that scientists who are on the cutting edge are coming up with these ideas which are so kind of ancient and fundamental to ancient belief systems and religions and that kind of thing. But how could these ideas, and the way that you described it in such great detail before, how can these be used against the empire and all of those horrible things that we were talking about earlier?
Well, I think that there's two things. And so the first is that it's not really about using them against it. It's about refusing those things power. Like, you don't give them access to power. That's the message that I've gotten consistently from all of the folks that I deal with. And I have a black queen chess piece here. The queens are heavily involved in this part of my thinking, and that's what I use as a contact point for them. And what the queens told me is that in these kind of functional societies, it was really literal that somebody would start going off the edge and start to do stuff. Maybe they would start overhunting when it wasn't needed, or they would be abusive, or they would do destructive things. You know, they would be hoarding. And that basically in those societies, this would be recognized, and it wasn't left to that individual to realize it, because they were super aware that when you're caught up in it, you don't have kind of all of your faculties. And so someone would literally go and like send kind of, you know, a bunch of people that were in your kind of similar positions or age or whatever out to you, along with some of the elders, and they would be like, hey, you got to come in. And you didn't get to say no. And they would bring you in and basically do, kind of coming from how we think about it now, some forms of ceremony to try and get you right, that they did recognize as like, this isn't a logical thing. It's not sane in the context of what we're talking about. And so we have all of this technology, and by that I mean kind of spiritual technology, to go, okay, something got into you, something got onto you that has got you jacked up in this way, and we need to now fix that. And you didn't get to say no. If you wanted to say no, you got to leave. It's like, no. And so they had this very zero tolerance, because these were very tight-knit communities, and somebody did that, a bunch of people could die. And now this is starting to make sense to us on a mass scale, right? You let somebody like people that are in power now, and hundreds of thousands of people, if not, you know, just with what happened with cutting USA aid, you know, millions of people are dying from that. Those people should never have been allowed to have power. And at the moment that was seen, it's like, no, you're nuts. It's not about saving money. It's not about anything else. It's like, that's not viable. And so to me, the answer, and what comes from the queens and the dead, is that we have to become really rigorously attentive to all of this stuff everywhere, and just go like, no, none of these people get to do this. And you start small and try to heal where you can, and you probably ostracize where you can. You disempower where you can. And like everybody says, it's like community is the thing that matters, and that will save us. But not necessarily us individually, and this is the thing that I think is really hard in the West, where we've been trained to think individually, is it's not necessarily about that. It's like, is what's going on actually all kind of in alignment with the ideas of healthy survival for all of us? And so that is the answer. It's just not an easy thing. There's not a political answer, really, except to not fucking give these people political power at all. And as soon as you get to the place where you go, okay, how do we make sure you can't amass this kind of power in a world that's set up like ours, which basically requires a total reframing away from this kind of extractive, hoarding, capitalist mindset, and go, okay, collectively, what works? What works for us? What works for the environment? What works for not running more species into extinction? And how do we begin going the other way? Why do we have all of these folks that we have all this idea that you have to be productive in a way that feeds money into those people's coffers, versus like, I know that there's a shit ton of like, anarcho-primitivist kids that would be like, oh, you want me to go live in the woods and plant trees and like fix shit for like the next 30 years and you'll cover the food and travel and all that shit? Okay. Like you don't even, that's not even like a difficult thing. We know that those folks are there. This idea that let's minimize all of the labor, which has been the big sell of technology forever, which has really always been about how do we disempower the people? Like, how do we make people irrelevant? And that's really what AI is for, is how do we make people irrelevant and know that they're irrelevant so that what we then do makes sense to them because they've bought that pill and they've taken enough of them that they're like, oh yeah, no, it's true. I'm not productive and that thing can do my job. So I guess I should just fucking rot, rather than, no, this is insanity. Fuck y'all.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a really powerful thought. I suppose there's two things that come to my mind. One would be, well, it's okay. So firstly, I as you've talked about, a lot of these ideas have come to you through spirit contact. And so for the people who are listening to this podcast, I was hoping that you could maybe say or give ways that they can become closer to their own spirit ecology to try to also benefit from this sort of guidance. But the thing that strikes me when I'm thinking about that is that that's fine for the listeners of this podcast and the people in your Discord and the people who read your books, because they're kind of halfway there already or fully there already. It seems a challenge to get these ideas to people who are, I mean, I know there's a bit of a resurgence in religion, but it's still primarily secular or atheist, really. And we are, as part of this whole idea of the Enlightenment and the transhumanism and that kind of thing that we're caught up in, there's almost a rejection of spirituality, and with that becomes the separation of us from a nature-based ecology to be something with dominion, and that's the domination side of that pathology. But how do we start to get these ideas into the hands of people who spread it,
I'm not the person to ask that because this has been my entire life. I don't really know. The thing that I've had some success with talking to people is really kind of just focusing on the systems side of it. Like, what benefit have we gained from any of the species extinction? And what benefit have we gained from any of the kind of ecological destruction that has been done? Not did we get some new toy or did we make some more people rich, but like, what's the overall good? And until people begin to think, whether they're kind of spiritually minded or not, in that kind of a way, I don't think you what we're talking about makes sense, because I do believe that this kind of materialist, dominionist project, it's been running for a really long time, and it sits behind so much of our thinking that it's really tricky to, you can't go at it with the super woo with those people, because they're just like, wow, that guy's crazy. And I'm cool with that. I think they are too. It's mutual. But I do think kind of getting that idea of like, why aren't we looking at the entire thing? Or kind of what that woman on Rachel Donald's podcast was talking about, of like, look, we know that if we just take everything from these people that have taken everything from everybody else, and don't let that happen again, we know exactly how to feed everybody and get everybody clean water. It's not even a question. We know how to do it. We could do it. We could do it fast. We could begin undoing tons and tons of damage. But you don't get it within the system as it is. And that's, I think, that's my issue with a lot of the politics, whether it's progressive or not, is I think it misses the biggest picture, which is like, we won't survive in a system this way, even if these massive billionaires are theoretically being a little better. The whole system of that has to go away. And they're never going to vote for that. They're never going to go quietly. And so you have to either kind of make them irrelevant over time, which is, I think, the way that it actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you read people like, the people I've been reading, Grace Blakely, Jason Hickel, George Monbiot, Clara Matei, people like that, the message that you get from that isn't what liberals are saying, which is, the system's broken, we've got to fix it. The truth is that the system is working exactly as it was designed.
Yes.
And it's doing really well. It's doing so well that it is in control now. The system is controlling us. And whilst we remain within that system, there's very little hope of us being able to change anything, because the system will self-regulate and perpetuate itself. A lot like a virus, like we keep coming back to, this thing is it's now in control.
And it's interesting too, because it's like, if you look at like that idea that I got from the ancestors about, and the queens about, like, okay, so you go off the rails, you become a menace to society, literally, whether that's on a household level or a big level, and you get brought in to get corrected, right? You look at that, and that this is like, we're going to actually try and get you okay, so you can continue to have a fucking family, and you can have a fucking culture, and you can have a society that you're a part of and that works for you. And you counter that with, and this seems to be improving a little bit over here, in some places, with kind of the function of, say, psychiatry or psychotherapy, which is just kind of like, how well can you maintain as a part of the machine? It's like, you kind of have to move into some fringy stuff, at least in my experience, to get to people like, oh yeah, you might not ever be able to have a normal job and be okay, because that's not really a path to being okay. And you might have to find some middle ground there, but I can't, tell you that we can do this work that will make you to be okay going back to work for Elon Musk and and so it's a very different thing, because I agree. I think the system is functioning exactly as advertised. And that's got to be looked at really straight on. And you have to watch that thing that we were talking about earlier, which is kind of, Tyson Yunkaporta says it really great, that he says that among the kind of progressive left, they have this problem, which is that they believe every hill must be died upon. Right, which is, you got to fight for everything being pristinely as you like it, or it's a problem that needs to be shredded, and you need to make sure that person knows they're stupid. That you have to be able to kind of come in and go, okay, let's get you right, and let's help you out, and let's help you figure out how you can fit into a world that works for everybody. And And some of that is straight up going to be, you can't do anything productive. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that has to be okay. Because we aren't in that, it's like if you go back 1,000 years, the vast majority of us were probably farmers, right? In some fashion. Were we really productive in the way that they're talking about? No. We were making enough food to support us and do some trade among the other farmers that were around us so that we ended up with the ability to survive. And not saying we all have to go back and be farmers, because the world is very different. But that's not the same thing as kind of productivity culture. It's totally different. That is the super abstract extractive tool. And I think people see this, and this is why people have such a hard time in their jobs a lot of the time, is you're like, okay, I'm like massively stressed. I have all this anxiety, and I don't know what I'm doing this for, except I don't know how else to kind of feed myself and my family. That's really fucked up. It shouldn't be that. You should be able to look at it and go, okay. I think it's totally reasonable that you have people that you look at and you go, oh, you can help us when we need to like put a roof on the house or something, but we'd rather have you be making music, because that's this incredible value brought into the community, or making art, or many, many different things. But if everything's commodified, then nothing has value, right?
That's obviously kind of quite a bigger picture way of looking at it. But if we were to sort of zoom in on like an individual person, what sort of changes do you think a person could make, or how do you think a person could start to improve that?
So I'm just going to stick with our people, because I don't know the other stuff, as I said. What we're talking about in my zone a lot is that behind all of these systems, there's a narrative that explains why they exist and why either they are right and just, or why, though they aren't, there's no alternative. And I think we need a really massive movement to completely upend that and go, no, there's a million things we could do. Let's talk about all of them. Let's talk about them as activists. Let's talk about them as artists. Let's talk about them as magicians. Let's talk about them as writers. And let's flood the zone with this super anti or post-dystopianism. Because the stories all suck. Like it's just degrees of bad, right? It's like, okay, well, yeah, your job working for the mega corporation is awful, but it's not The Road or Mad Max. That's kind of how it's sold right now. And it's like, you got one or the other. You can fuck that. And I think letting yourself off the hook for fixing everything, because that's not happening. None of us can do that. And I think that's a really long project. And so we've been playing with kind of the Black Book, which is a journaled form of hypersigil that I talk about in Weaving Fate, in a project called After the Fall that is specifically about this. It's like kind of manifestation journaling, to put it in, to dumb it down as much as possible, about just different futures. Like, what would it be like if you didn't have to do any of these things that fuck you up? And if we weren't bombing the fuck out of people that really didn't do anything, what would that be like on the ground? What would that be like today? When you wake up, what happened? Write that. And I think if we can get music about that, I think fiction, there's a lot of the solar punk and Afropunk movements are kind of pointed in this direction directly. My world is magic, so I'm looking more at how do you manifest this stuff through that. That works really well. I think for everybody in the West, developing an ancestral practice that is focused more on healing than ancestral veneration. Like, go, okay, we're here because our ancestors were so fucking jacked up. We need to probably start running some power and some healing back there. And so that's another aspect of a lot of my work is focused on that. and to realize that all of this stuff, whether you're looking at my material or other cultures, we know how to do all of this. It's kind of that same thing that goes back to what we've been talking about before. It's not like we don't know how to do the world differently. And I think we don't need to generate a million new ways to do magic. We can just bring what we know to bear on that, with the understanding that it's a multi-generational project. Like what I talk about with the peeps, and what they made really clear to me was that a lot of what I'm doing maybe is seeding stuff that's going to filter down through the people that are kind of engaging with it now into whatever forms maybe some of them transform it into, or somebody 30 years down the road transforms it into. And every version of this kind of imagining a future that is healthy and well and works, that we can seed into kind of the collective unconscious and into the collective consciousness, helps. But it has to happen on just a massive level, because the other thing is everywhere. It's like we have to try and, it's almost like we're having to like grow healthy tissues in a totally toxic environment until there's enough of that to overwhelm the toxin. It's like, I think everybody wants the fix, and it's like, can we get it from stage 4 to stage 2 in a few generations? Like that to me is winning.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting, because before we had this conversation tonight, I thought that what you might say would be on the lines of, well, the answer to this is that everyone should be an animist, and then everyone will be able to understand the things that we understand. But I mean, when I think about that now, after what you have said, it seems ridiculous, because one thing, that can never be the answer, but two thing, that's pushing a form of uniformity onto everyone and telling them that they have to look at the world in a different way. And the truth is, what you're saying is closer to that everyone has a role to play in something that can be better. And what made me really think about that was when you were saying about, if someone's gone ape shit and they're taking all the meat for themselves and all the resources and keeping it to one place in societies gone by, that there'd be an elder or a sort of a wiser person who would say, right, time out, you're coming in here, we're going to fix you up. Now, the person who's been hoarding all this stuff doesn't have to be a magical person or an animist, or anything like that, but what the society needs is some people who can take that removed view, just a few people, without being dismissed or without being ostracized or ridiculed, which is basically what happens in society today. And so it's really interesting thought. And it ultimately, the way that you described it tonight is more powerful than what I thought you were going to say, because I can kind of see that working a lot more clearly.
Yeah, and I think too, kind of going to like, we have all the information, right? We know all these systems are interconnected. All the science exists there. It's kind of countered by all this corporate funded science that says, but maybe not, right? But even if you got to a place where you went, okay, we're going to get all of those studies that are clearly bullshit out of here. And we're going to make an archive of them and state like, okay, all of this stuff was funded by Chevron. All of this was funded by, BP. All of these things were funded by that. And you begin to assemble all this stuff. And what you're going to end up with, because it's real, is all of this hard data that says all this shit is interconnected. Even if you don't buy it on a spiritual level, like just as animals in a fucking living system, we need the whole system functional. And what we've been doing does not work. Doesn't work politically, doesn't work, on the commerce end or whatever. And you start educating people to that. One of the things that I think is interesting that happened here, coming out of, again, those Reagan years, is the folks that are kind of Heritage Foundation and the folks behind kind of Project 2025 and many other think tanks like that. They began pushing for conservatives to get into any political position locally that they could. And so the thing that was kind of like sneered at, I think, by the liberals who were like looking at, let's get the big positions, is these guys were like, well, let's get on the school board. Let's get on the city council, right? If that were done from folks that are thinking more like we're talking here, you go, okay, so you get if you can take over as many school boards as possible with people that are doing this, going like, no, we want straight, peer-reviewed, ecologically minded, long-term survival minded science. And we want to teach that to all of our kids starting when they're in second grade. Again, a generation or two later, you have a different world. What we've got now is they've gutted all of those sections because they realize they're problematical to their plan. And so I think we have to really go incremental and really hardcore about it. And I do think that there's magic that can be done to support that. But I think it's almost indirect. Like people we want to do the surgical strike quick fix. And I think
the cursed Donald Trump
cursed Donald Trump thing.
Yeah, I think part of that, like what you're describing, is difficult because almost like when a person is in a bad place mentally, then it's harder for them because of the symptoms of that illness to do the right things to get out of. So say if like with say depression, it would help if you got exercise, but depression itself makes you not want to exercise, for instance. Okay, so it's almost like on a wider level in terms of kind of humanity, we're at a point where we're ill, but the things that we need to do, we're ill in a way that mean that the things that we need to do, we're far less likely to want to do because we're just fucked.
And we don't know we're ill, a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important thing there, coming from the perspective of everything that I am talking about and the kind of spirit contact, is we're ill because of that effect. That's desired.
Yes, so it's by design.
Yeah.
Because if you are fucked up and totally reliant on whatever scraps you can get.
Yeah. And you're not going to fight because you're
kept weak. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important that people not be raised to like understand how the world actually works structurally from a material level. Even is if everybody really got that from the time that they were little kids, and not all of this two sides thing of like, yeah, but then there's the biblical view. You go, different thing, out of here, or even the animist view, out of here. Like, this shouldn't be, I don't think what I'm talking about is a thing that should be taught in public schools. I think this is something that somebody can find when it makes sense, but understanding that all these, like, hey, the reason we're all so fucked up is because the system that your elders built and your ancestors built was intended to make you fucked up. And this is really hard for people to face. It's why I often bring up the great-grandfather that was sexually abusive to his kids, is because it is to kind of normalize that, because we do have this sense of shame about this, right? For a lot of people do. And so then you don't want to talk about that. So then people think that's unusual, which it's really not unusual. And until all of these things can just be kind of on the table and addressed soundly, and good faith arguments are looked at, but it's really obvious when people are not operating in good faith, but kind of they've skewed the way we can even have these discussions to make that look different than it is, and so I do think, it's multi-level, but I do think it helps me to look at people and go like you said, yeah, there's tons of evil coming out of these people, but it's not really that in this kind of God Satan thing. It's they're completely fucked up. And the way they're fucked up has sent them down this track. It's tough because there's people that do shit that I'm like, I would like to put us out of our misery.
Yeah. Right? There's people that certainly test your
absolutely, and
yourself.
I'm not entirely against that in certain situations, but once I do look at it, and I look at some of the people that I know who've been massively misguided by a lot of this shit, which I have a number of them in my family who are gone now. I can see like they were like really confused, really scared, and then really indoctrinated by 40 years of Fox News.
Yeah. We've got the same over here.
And
like with our
and it shouldn't be it shouldn't happen. And it's one of the things that I think like free speech should be a concept that's about free speech that is true.
Yeah.
But what's true?
Like free lying. Well, this is, I think, that it's one of my arguments against a lot of the even chaos magic stuff. Is it's like I don't buy that there's not a reality.
Yeah.
I buy that it's quite possibly beyond our ability to understand.
Yeah.
But the one we're in makes sense. All the systems make sense.
But the one we're in has been manipulated in a way that so the way the reality we're in now is flexible, not in the way that we're talking about in terms of from like a spiritual magical point of view, but more in terms of people can just say whatever the fuck they want, and everyone's got like their own like kind of reality tunnel. So it's like, where do you go with that?
I mean, to me, I think like I said, it's like you push really good science and you push the best, like real, we know a lot of shit. We know why what's going on in the climate is going on. We know why the oceans are in the state they are. We know why there are however million homeless people there are in the United States. We know all that shit. And you have to, again, become intolerant of those who would kind of weaponize misinformation around all these things to further their own ends. That's the big message that I got from the Queens. They came in like, fucking kill them all, is how they showed up in my house. And I was like, whoa, this is not my usual, my spirits are usually pretty chill, and they were not. And they're like, fucking kill them all. And I actually went to a psychic when they came through because I was like, what do I do with these people? And she was like, oh yeah, only the first two of them came through and they're really pissed. But like, give it like 6 months and the other ones will get on board and it'll settle down. And that was true. And I was finally like, after this like many nights of them kind of giving me the litany of our ills and some of how things they say used to occur in functional society, I was like, what is your message though? Like if you were to like narrow it down to what we do, and their answer was radical intolerance. And I think that that's correct. I think we have to become really radically intolerant for shit that we know is fucking egregious bad.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, you don't get to rape your kids. You don't get to rape anybody else's kids. You don't get to poison the groundwater. You don't get to use all of the groundwater so that my phone talks to me more like whatever, my fantasy girlfriend. Right? No. But that is a complete reorganization of the modern world, which is, I think, what we're looking for. To me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a complete reorganization of the modern world.
Yeah, I reckon we should be able to sort that in the next few weeks. Between us,
I mean,
we're all relatively smart.
The idea of radical intolerance, though, I think that is a fairly succinct way to seed an idea into people's heads, because that's something that we could try. Like now, if someone that I work with is talking shit about immigrants or something. I mean, I'm lucky that most people I work with don't do that. But I mean, or anyone, at any point, sometimes the temptation is just like shrug and just think to yourself, I'm going to get the fuck out of here and wander off. But the idea of the radical intolerance is more, why stand for the shit as it is now? Why?
And it's not even necessarily head-to-head, right? It's kind of like if you know people that have been in domestic violence situations, what do you tell them? You tell them, get out.
Like, figure out a safe way to get out and get out. And this is that same thing. You know, I had this go on with my uncle long before he died, that he got deeper and deeper into kind of pre-QAnon conspiracy stuff. I don't know if he ever went full Q. I'd cut him off on that shit before that. But and he started talking nonsense one day on the phone. And I was just like, dude, I'm not ever going to talk to you again about any of this stuff. So if you want to talk to me, we're not talking about any of this shit because it's nonsense. And he's like, no, but it's like, no, come on, dude. You like know on some level that you have very carefully chosen all of the shit that you're looking at. And if I can point you in other directions, and if you want to dive into my shit for a few months and then come back and have the conversation, I'll do that. But right now, I think you're just full of shit. You're just, you like the hype. You like the anger. You like the aggression. You like the license to be a dick. And I'm not giving you that here. I don't have to talk to you. I don't live with you.
Yeah. And that's the attitude is that's fueled, you know, that sort of the license to the license for people almost to not care and to be a dick themselves is what's put the government that America has now in place, because there's some part of a lot of people, I think, because there's a similar movement, Nigel Farage and this whole reform thing in Britain, there's some part of the people, there's something in people that wants to be that wants to be able to get away with that wants to be able to, and that fuels that the tolerance that people have for it, because people in a twisted way almost admire it because these people,
they relate to it because it's like the id, isn't it? It's like they feel like it's what they're afraid to say. It's like this obnoxious man on the television says all the things that I've been secretly thinking, and so I admire him. And it's like,
and he doesn't give a fuck, and he can get away with all
and
this
it's like
stuff.
these people like Farage and Trump find it. Although I don't think Trump did it consciously. I don't think Trump does anything consciously. I think he's just like, I don't think there's an awful lot of like, but like it's like they found a way to tap into this little part of a lot of people that's in a lot of people that is ugly and is like it is jealous and angry, and it's all these things that almost you're not supposed to think.
The worst
that most of us, but we do all think it to some degree. I'm not saying that we share necessarily the same thoughts as these men, but we do all have these ugly parts in us. I know I do, and I say no, that's not right. This is not a nice thing to think, or this is not right. This is just I'm thinking this because I'm in this situation. But I think when people, perhaps you get people that are in such a bad place and are so disenfranchised or whatever, that they will look at what Farage or Trump are saying and just think, this person speaks for me. Finally, I can, and it's like, it is really sad, and it's hard to view it with compassion, because it is so ugly. But I think it is. I think what I'm trying to say is Trump and Farage have found a way to kind of weaponize this ugliness that exists within most people, but it's just that some people are better at kind of dealing with it than others. You know.
And I think that's, you know, there's another great thing from, I believe it was in a talk with between Tyson Yunkaporta and Rune Hjornar Rasmussen, where Tyson's talking about kind of Aboriginal gatherings, and that how they understand that like some of the young dudes are gonna fight because this is what young dudes do. And so they create a space at the gathering, which is like, there's like the place you go to fight. So you don't get to do it in amongst the general population at all, right? You like actually have to go, hey, dude, I want to go fight. Let's go fight, right? And I don't remember if it's in the same conversation with him or a different one, but he also talks about a traditional way that this was done, which is it was done with stone knives. and you could only cut each other on the kind of upper back and upper arms. So it's like, it's quite literally meant you have to grapple with the person, right? That was the thing. You couldn't do any distance damage. And then once it was done, you were given all of the wounds that you had given the other person.
Wow, okay.
Like somebody then cut you everywhere that you had cut the other person. So like you get to get it out of your system, but nobody gets ahead.
Yeah. So it's almost like a club where people go to fight and there's a set of rules.
Yeah, but don't talk about that.
Yeah, we best not talk about it because it's not really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was brilliant because, and Tyson talks about this. It's like what it did was is then culturally you're totally not allowed to carry any grievance about what happened to there. Like it's just no. If you're like I kicked that guy's ass, it's like everybody's like shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
That is not what that was about. You guys went and did it. You look just as bad as he did. Why are you telling me you won, motherfucker? Right? It's like zero tolerance for your bullshit about it. It's like, okay, you got to get out of your system. And I think this is tied into that. It's like, it's tied into you don't assume we're not going to do fucked up shit. Right? Like I do know someone who was Native American that kind of had gone off the rails. And this is a story that was told to me about somebody else within their tribe. And they basically did get pulled into one of these kinds of, interventions from the elders. And part of that was they said like, okay, you're going to do this process. And we pretty much assume your woman's going to leave you. And you're going to deal with that. Because you did this. Right? It's again, there's very low tolerance there. It's like, we're not going to necessarily kick you out of the tribe because what you did wasn't that egregious, but don't think that you can like go back unless they want you back. You've crossed lines that there's no reason why they should put up with you. And you don't get a say about that. And this is not the way we do things here,
Well, I think it's the repression of the impulse that isn't being allowed to be acted out as it was in those Aboriginal tribes that causes the repression, which needs that release that Buckley was talking about. When you see Farage or Trump on the it's like, oh, finally, all this like malignant shit that's been pushed down has a place to come out, and this feels good. And it's just like any addiction, because I remember that feeling from when I was a drinker, that feeling of like, well, tonight I'm going to get so drunk I don't give a shit, and it wasn't that I was going to do something bad or anything. It's just that I wasn't, like I knew that I wasn't going to have it like I'd repressed so much shit there was no way to get it out. And
Yeah, and a key point that's about all this stuff that I think animism really addresses very directly is that how I put it and how a lot of the indigenous folks talk about it, though we may not be talking kind of equivalence again, is that it's dealing with these ideas of kinship, right? So everybody is related, so you don't get away from that. And at the point you start saying, I can do this egregious shit to this person because she's a woman or because she is from a different culture or has a different God. This is that process that we talk about as being othering, right? This is what allows you to be somebody that is massively bigoted, right? Is you've decided all of these people are not really people. And these systems have been feeding this forever because it's what produces that social stratification where everybody on all the lower rungs is kind of maintaining that structure, which leaves the fucking people at the top to just continue skimming, right? Instead of going like, wait a second, I may not dig your religion, or I may not understand your language, or I may not like your food, but those guys are fucking us. So all of this shit that we're talking about, the id stuff coming out, again, I believe is mostly, like, people are not going to necessarily get along, but the way that it's been weaponized for as long as we know about kind of, at least kind of city-states, and the cultures that grew up from those, has been to do this. Like, those people aren't really people, so we're going to go take what we want, right? And this is how a lot of this kind of manosphere and even the Christian nationalist chunk that's super like anti-women's rights, this is what they're saying essentially, is they're like, there are men and we are people, and there are women and they are property. So they're not people. Like, when you other things, you can own them, right? Instead of, even when it comes down to like hunting cultures, traditional hunting cultures, pretty universally, as far as I've ever been able to see, looked at that thing and said, I don't get to kill that fucking deer or whatever and eat it because I'm better than it. It's just, we're part of a chain that consumes one another. So I'm going to do this respectfully, and I'm going to use that thing to keep my family alive, just like the wolves do this to keep their families alive. It's not that we're better than them. And this is why I think it's another thing that animism really helps with, because you begin viewing all of these other people that we share just the material planet with within that light. We realize that we are not necessarily the crown of creation. We are simply the most dangerous animal on the planet right now. And we have to use kind of our power really fucking wisely because of that. And that's where that kind of ethic comes in, whether it's a spiritual ethic or even whether it's just a straight material survival ethic of going like, yeah, no, we can't fish anymore here because we fucked up this creek or this lake, right? And we'll come back in a while and see how that is.
So what's next, Aidan, for you? I know that you've been working on this book for a while. Do you have any idea of when it's coming or when it's finished or anything like that? Or is it a work in progress still?
I just sent the manuscript off to my editor, and she's going to do her thing of reading it a few times and then formulating her opinions about where I'm talking nonsense, where I'm being completely unclear and what else it needs. And then it'll come back to me and we'll just bounce it back until it's done. I always think they're going to get shorter and they seem to always get longer.
That's good for the reader.
Who the hell knows when it's done? But I was hopefully I'll be done, except for actually like doing the work to get it printed by the end of the year. But that may be overly hopeful.
Brilliant.
We'll
and
see.
is it a standalone or is it part? Because I know you talked about Six Ways, Weaving Fate, and Changeling as being a kind of green trilogy. Do you have plans for more to follow this one?
I kind of have. I have a book that might come on the Queens. We're kind of sorting that. A lot of what they were interested in me sharing is in the current book. So I'm not sure if that one will happen. So I'm not really sure. It's for at this point, it's just get through this. It's definitely standalone. It's very different from the other ones. So it will not be. It's the end of the green book.
Are you? What are your plans with the podcast? Like, have you got loads of? Have you pre-recorded a few, or are you kind of?
No, that's not how I operate. What I did was I got about 20 people who have agreed to talk on it over the last couple of years. Yeah. And I will kind of work out the production stuff by doing a couple of them on my own, and then I'll start bringing guests on. But it'll probably be pretty sporadic. And I'm mostly interested in talking to folks more just about life than super focused. I'm interested in kind of magically minded folks or related stuff. I have a couple of musicians that I think very highly of that have agreed to chat, and I'll get them in as well, and we'll just kind of go from there and see how it goes.
Fantastic. And you're teaching courses still, aren't you? You've got one. I think that by the time this airs, the BAP course will have actually started, probably, because this will probably be early July, I think. But you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I did your entrance course, which was fantastic, and that ran from sort of autumn into winter last year. I got a lot out of that, and I still use those recordings and practices now. I think it's really good, and I signed on for the BAP course as well, which is kind of beginning of practice. But people can find all that stuff on your Patreon, which I really, really recommend to people. Halfway through last year, I was really broke, and I had to cancel my Patreons and a load of my subscriptions, TV and music and stuff. But as soon as I had the money again, I was straight back onto the Aidan Wachter Patreon, because there is a lot on there, and it's one way to stay connected to a magical community if you're a bit out on a limb, and there's not a lot of people around me who practice or who talk about magic outside of what we do here on the podcast. So being able to check in on new videos and go to your Discord and speak to other people who do magic is really, really good. So I think if people are at all interested in what you've talked about tonight, the Patreon is definitely something for them to check out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a really good space. I'm really pleased. It's one of those that I was hesitant to start, but it's become a really good thing, and I think that the people in there are really good. We've had very few issues, and they've been pretty easy to resolve. So
fantastic. And are you online at all other than that?
Hey, I like strictly use social media to follow up on a couple of friends that won't talk to me any other way. And then when I have something like the course or the book, or I've been on a podcast or whatever, I share it there, but I don't really hang out on social media. Right now I've been quite busy on there because I've got a lot of stuff going on, but as soon as the course starts, I will disappear, except for when the new stuff comes out or a podcast comes out. I just can't. Yeah. It's not good for me to put my head there for too long.
No, fantastic. Well, we'll put a link to your Patreon in our show notes here, so everyone will be able to find that. And do check it out, everyone. Just have a little look and see what's there.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a number of things in there that are free, including I just re-uploaded or just changed the permissions on a bunch of our kind of guided energy workings and re-uploaded that link pile.
Oh yeah, so Keith uploaded that on our, he linked it on our Discord.
Excellent. Yeah. Super good.
Today.
Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes as well. And for people who want to find more Vayse, we are on Instagram at Vayse, then Vayse spelled backwards. That's at VAYSEESYAV. We are on Blue Sky and Twitter. We don't really use them anymore, particularly not Twitter. I don't think I've logged into that this year. But so Instagram's the place, or go to our website, www.vayse.co.uk, where you can find the podcast, which is available on all podcasting platforms, but it's on the website that you get the full show notes. So all the great links and things like that. You can email us on vayse.info@gmail.com with any ideas or experiences that you want to talk about. On Bandcamp, there's 2 volumes of our music plus a compilation that our listeners made. And as Buckley mentioned at the beginning, Ko-Fi is the place where you can get access to our Discord. You can get access to our other podcast, the PK Files, which is exclusively for people on the Discord who follow us on Ko-Fi. That's only $5 a month. There's loads of really interesting people on our Discord talking about loads of great stuff. It's a lot of fun. And thank you so much, Aidan, for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been such a really interesting, and like I was saying towards the end, it wasn't how I thought it would go at all. It was a lot more inspiring in the end, which is I'm really pleased about. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, I think that's true of the best podcast episodes. It's the ones where they don't go as expected, and it's like, that was like almost one of our most overtly political episodes.
For sure.
Yeah, that was great. So before you go, Aidan, just so that I'm clear with what you were trying to say to us tonight, you're not going to start a Luxmaxing business, right? Is that just? I just want to be clear. I've made notes, but I wasn't entirely sure. Is that not on the cards?
Not unless we're going to go like full on Dr. Adder. I don't know if you ever read that book, but like, we're going to give you like egregious bionic arms and shit like that, so you can fucking go fight the patriarchy.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that's so we should start like an alternate Luxmaxing, like a.
We need just go hardcore. Just go like dangerous cyborg maxing, and then go out and use that shit for good.
Yeah,
you could call it Animaxxing.
Just like Nazi punching fist maxing or something.
Yeah, like if you're gonna don't like fucking hit yourself in the face. Get an eye that you can like fry the bad guys with. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. You speak to your people. We'll speak to our people, and we'll see if we can come together.
We'll all be billionaires by this time next year.
We'll all be billionaires, yeah.
I'm going to say that he's not going to make it if I have the laser eye.
You've got a few house calls to make when that happens. Vayse.